and welcome to CostumeTrek. I'm Nola, and today we're going to do a Cos-Talk with the lovely and talented Dee and Hal Astell. So Dee and Hal are very into conventions and fandom, and they are deeply involved in running a lot of the conventions that we enjoy here in beautiful Arizona. So welcome. It's lovely to have you. So how did you guys get started doing this?
Running things?
Yeah. What do you do?
What don't I do? I do a lot of programming for many conventions in Arizona. This year alone, I'm chairing 2 local sci-fi fantasy conventions, LepreCon 45 and CocoCon 2019. What was the question again?
How did you get into it?
How did I get into it? Thank you.
You got roped in from the fashion show.
I got acquainted with some of the people out in Mesa. Debbie Leeper and Sharon Skinner, they ran a little fashion show at the 101 Gallery on Steampunk Street.
How long ago was this?
2010, 2011.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
It's about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I was totally
grief.
steampunk curious back then. So we went, we had made friends, and I started wrangling models from them. And then when Sharon took over doing the track for then Phoenix Comic Con for steampunk, she did the fashion show, and they said, hey, come back down and do this wrangling for us. I said, okay, sure. And then somehow or other the next year, I ended up running the show and have ever since.
So do you do steampunk costuming yourself, or do you just collect steampunk people?
Well, that is the biggest thing I do, is I collect a lot of talented steampunk people. I can put together a costume. I find things I like. When the first year I was into steampunk, I was the crazy woman behind the camera that just ran around to events taking pictures of everyone and everything. That was basically what they knew me as, the crazy woman with the camera.
Countess Chaos the Chronicler.
Yes, Countess Chaos the Chronicler.
Wow, okay.
So I can't really sew my way out of a paper bag. Please forgive me, people.
Hey, that's okay. Cosplay is for everybody.
It's true, but most of them think, well, you're running a fashion show, you should know all of it. Yeah, I do. I know all of the right people. And I'm good at putting together events, but...
So Hal, how about yourself?
I think I started here with the panels. Went to Phoenix Comic Con and I went to a panel that looked interesting, and there were a whole bunch of people I knew on the panel, and I gave a lot of feedback from the audience, but I was still a little in awe. These guys are up there on the stage. They must be important. I wish I could be that important. And then a year later, I'm running panels. And then I gradually got roped into more and more things.
Right.
And a lot of it, I think, for me, comes out of there are certain things I want to see. And if nobody else is doing them, then I get to step up and do them.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because, you've got to constantly change and evolve these events. Otherwise, it gets boring and people don't want to come back because they're like, well, I've been to this event.
One thing I didn't realize until very recently is I've been involved in fandom a lot longer than I thought. Back in England, back in the 80s, I was a member of a couple of fan clubs. And I went out to meetups.
Yeah, that's a...
it's fandom.
That's fandom.
You didn't know it.
And I didn't know the old difference between, used to be fans and readers. So readers would show up and they read the books and they loved the stuff and they enjoyed the conventions, but they didn't really do anything at the conventions. They just read the books. But the fans back in the day used to be the people who did stuff. So they took what they read and organized conventions. They wrote zines. They... put together all sorts of things. You had cosplay going back to the 30s. Yeah, there was. They would take it that step further.
The thing that I find fascinating about the costuming, because cosplay wasn't a word until the 80s,
right?
Is that back then people still did dress up like their favorite movies, but they also dressed up as their favorite book characters.
Yes,
which I really like because I'm a big proponent of original design. And not just, copying somebody else's design over and over again. Which, that has its place too. And that absolutely, that's what, gets out there.
Yes.
And I certainly,
and that's where a lot of
people
start too. They may start by testing the waters, by being this one and this one. And then a lot of them will move up to doing their own creations, which is nice to watch the evolution of.
I wonder now if the designers on these movies are sitting up there going, ha ha ha, they'll never be able to copy this.
I dare them to try.
Because they get harder and harder, and like specialty fabric,
yeah.
Right.
like the Star Trek fabric that has the little tiny Star Trek insignias all over it. Yeah, you can't just buy that. Well, you can, but it's expensive. So this is entirely volunteer, labor of love, insanity.
Yeah, and also kind of the if it's a nonprofit, most of the time you're not only not getting paid, you're paying for the privilege of running the convention.
Yes, I've done that.
First time I tried to explain to people who I work for in other conventions who don't charge me that, hey, I got to charge you.
Right.
So a lot of times I end
Freight's
up...
cheap, but it's more than zero.
Right. So a lot
Right.
of times I have set up, donation things, or we cover a lot of our own people because I can't ask someone to do that. It still kind of gets me.
I think, yeah, and I think that back in the past, it used to be that you would get a comped membership if you worked the conventions. But as these smaller conventions have gotten smaller,
Yeah.
they can't afford to do that anymore.
Well, now
There are perks.
there are perks, and an old school fandom gets it.
Right.
New fandom does
Not get it. Right. Well, and it's because these bigger conventions, they are for-profit industries, and everybody knows that they make money, and they make a lot of money. When you've got 80,000 people coming at $40 a pop, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to
Or
do the math.
$100 a pop.
When I was running the WesterCon, I tried to make myself available to sit down and talk to some of the old school fandom, and I would spend hours getting schooled on these are the things that you have to have. And I said, I'm willing to listen, and if it works, I'm willing to use it. That doesn't mean I can do everything that you want, but I think more than anything, I got respect for the fact that I sat down and talked to them.
Right. What keeps bringing you guys back to this somewhat challenging, thankless? You get thanked, but you don't really get,
There's
remuneration.
There's times when you feel like you do, and there's lots of times you feel like you don't.
It can be thankless because the things you get thanked for are generally the things that people expect to be
Or take for granted.
complicated and difficult, and they generally turn out to be really easy. I volunteer. Right, that's the difficult bit. Now I'm getting thanked for that, but you don't get thanked for all the other things that nobody knows you do. They take forever, cost money, cost time, cost effort, cost political problems.
A lot of it.
There's a sort of a thankful but a thankless bit. And what's weird is the way that they
Right.
don't always match up with the effort.
That sounds like being a costume designer.
I'm sure.
Because, most
Yeah.
of the time people don't see the work that goes into building a costume, so they have no idea.
Yes.
But the thing is a lot of the fans out here that we've gotten to know and hang out with or do dinners with or meetings and whatnot, I like a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing is that amuses me is this group, and then this group, and then if you look, that 90% of each
They're in the
batch
same group.
are in the same group.
Yeah.
So when we came on board, we kind of stirred the pot in many ways, but at the same time, we've tried to bring a lot of these groups together. And I think in some ways we have. Not everybody's thrilled with it, but there's some people that like the fact that we can actually go
We
do a
have to.
meeting or a dinner and people are laughing.
Right.
They're not arguing.
Well, I think that a lot of people that just go to conventions have no idea what behind the scenes look like. They have no idea how much work it is. They
Right.
just, well, what do you mean it's work? You get a hotel and then you all go. Like, it's so much more complicated than
So
that.
much.
My idea of a well-run convention is there can be 20 fires in the background that you're putting out right and left. But if your attendees have no
they have
clue,
no idea.
Yeah, if they have no idea that that's happening, then you've put on a successful convention.
Yeah.
And historically, some of those fires are completely wild and insane.
Oh, yeah.
And you
So,
would
well,
not believe them.
tell me one of your favorites. What's a
Favorite fire.
one of your favorite fires that you've had to put out? I know that getting on the spot, it can be hard to
Well, one of
think of
remember, yeah.
something.
The one she gets to talk about a lot, I wasn't there. The second year of Wild Wild West Steampunk Convention, there was a storm, and the big vendor tent, and this is a huge, huge vendor tent, started to blow away because the people who hammered it into the, pegs into the ground.
Company
Didn't do it very well.
Yeah, they didn't bring the sandbags.
outside company.
The ballast and stuff.
So,
Oh, wow.
so
They were our fault.
you had vendors and attendees. You had the bands.
guests.
Steam Powered Giraffe had been paid to come out as a performing artist. They were helping to hold the tent down until the company could come back and actually attach it properly to the ground.
We were all standing in, holding down every railing by a tag thing, keeping people out of the tent and holding it down so it didn't blow away. Doing 2 hour, 3 hour shifts until the company could actually get back to Tucson and properly ballast the tent.
And they're still talking about that 7 years later. And the fun is a key component. Back to the question, a lot of what brings us back to keep doing things and keep volunteering and all of this is to keep it a fun thing. Keep the politics as far out as we can. Let's all just have a good time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what are some other things that you guys are involved in town, because I know you don't just do the sci-fi fandom stuff.
Oh, outside of conventions. Yeah, quite a lot. One of the things I do is I run Arizona Fandom, which is a website that archives everything that's happened in the Arizona fandom scene all the way back. So I've got calendars for this year, next year on out, so you can see what's happening. But also stuff going back till the very beginning in 1970 when we had our first convention. I've got 9 gigabytes of material up now for free download as PDFs, program books, progress reports, all that stuff.
So where is that?
azfandom.org.
Okay.
And for Facebook, there is a Facebook group called Arizona Fandom.
Yep.
So that keeps me out of trouble, but I also run Apocalypse Later, which is a growing thing. Originally, it started as a movie review site, and that grew. Now I review books, I review music. I have a couple of albums reviewed every weekday, and that grew into
quite a bit on
books.
that.
So I publish books about film through Apocalypse Later Press. I run a full-fledged film festival, the Apocalypse Later.
Yeah, exactly.
The Apocalypse Later International Fantastic Film Festival, which is here in October every year. This year is year 4. And I run the Apocalypse Later Roadshow, which is where I take quality international short films and bring them to conventions across the Southwest. So that's not all here. Phoenix. I do Westercons now, so this year will be state number 4 when we go to Utah for Westercon 72. But I do a lot in San Diego as well, at Gaslight Steampunk Expo and other events.
Fantastic. Tell me about, I know you do a lot of the fashion shows at like Wild West Con and a few other conventions. Tell me what's the difference between a fashion show and a costume competition and a masquerade.
First thing I tell them, I say when I mention fashion show, they're like, oh, like a masquerade. I said, actually, no, and yes, slightly in the same breath, because I said, we do a fashion show with skits in it. And so that's more masquerade style. But we don't have any judging at the end. It's just a regular fashion show. We have fun with it.
Also, the fashion shows that we do are very much to showcase a character as much as costume.
Yes. Yeah, we do the character usually more
which
than
works
the
really
costume.
well with steampunk.
Yeah.
So everybody's got their own character, and we write a bio ahead of time. We'll have music picked for them, and so they come out and walk as that character. And if they do a little bit of a skit to interact, then great.
Yeah.
But,
I get a lot of newbies, but I have a whole slew of tried and true who keep coming back going, we have a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah.
And,
It is a lot of fun. I've been in a couple of her fashion shows.
I love having her.
the costume contests we do are different to masquerades because they are simpler.
Yeah.
We don't know who's going to be in the show until they sign up on the day. Literally, they'll walk behind and say, I want to be in the show. Here's my form.
Yeah.
So-
I have forms at the registration desk all weekend, and it's like, they need to bring the form to us on Sunday, And this is on the fly.
All on the fly.
All on
No
the fly.
bios, no music. They come on stage, she'll figure out an order, and I'll just talk to them a little bit, interact, look at the form. Oh, this is who you are, yes. And get them to show off to the audience and go down and talk to the judges. And that does have awards and
Oh yeah, they
prizes and whatever, but it's
It's a lot more
again,
laid back than a
very
more
laid back.
much
and
more.
then a
very laid back.
more
And very simple even with the judging. So I mean, we did Wild West Con this year was best male, best female.
Yeah.
Because they've set up a separate one for children. We used to have a best child. Whereas a Masquerade, you'll have levels.
Right.
Right,
You know, there's
yeah.
none of the
you have
journeyman,
novice,
master.
journeyman, master.
Yeah. And no
Different
prejudging.
Yeah, it's not half the tension I've seen and heard from
Right.
masquerades. That's why I'm
Right.
like, that's just not me.
Right. I know, I mean, personally for a local convention, I welcome the opportunity to do the fashion shows because I love showing off my work, but at the same time, I know that I actively discourage people if they find out, oh, Nola's in that competition, well, I'm not going to enter.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the judging forms that you give them, because somebody, a lot of our viewers may want to enter competitions, but they may not know really what to expect, or what are the judges looking at and looking for.
We give them some guidelines.
We
Sure.
give them
They
some
don't
guidance.
have to follow them.
Right,
It's
right.
not a requirement. And what did you have on there? It was presentation, character,
Imagination,
technical,
originality,
proficiency,
things like that.
steaminess,
Steaminess.
which
yes.
you spelled wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, various different categories, and they can rate each character on each
right.
one and total it up. But if they want to mix it up, that's up to them.
So what do you have upcoming?
It helps to check because
Yeah.
when you
And
change
you
your
can check at azfandom.org. There are 49 conventions in Arizona on the calendar already this year.
yeah.
Wow, 49. I had no idea.
Peak was
That's
2017. We hit 64 that I'm aware of. And I keep finding new ones.
Yeah.
Well, how much do conventions cost to run, and how much does it cost to actually attend, roughly?
A small science fiction convention is going to cost more comparatively on paper than a big comic convention because there will seem to be less happening. But they're really a different entity, so you've got to judge it differently. You can pay $80 to go to Phoenix Fan Fusion, and you've got
A zillion guests.
80,000 people in
And
costume.
they do
You've
got a
got a
great guest
vendor
list
hall
this
the
year.
size of Phoenix. You've got a gazillion guests you've seen on TV and film. A small science fiction convention, you're going to have 3 or 4, maybe 5 guests.
And they're all going to be fairly low.
Well,
Level.
we try to get high level, but not the A-list. Not
Right.
the people that come out of Ace Comic Con or anything like that. You're going to get time to sit down and talk to them. So it's not the 20 seconds, selfie, and sign, and you're done. You go on next in line. It's, you can sit down and chat with somebody for an hour. You will know who
Bite
George
your tongue.
R.R. Martin is. And at Tuscon, which was 500 people.
Yes.
They
Yes.
He sat in the bar for most of the event chatting with fans.
Yeah.
Just go sit in a bar, buy a drink, and
Yeah,
chat
only
with
500
George.
people, and
like-
everybody could do it. Well, and they also have usually hospitality rooms,
Absolutely.
which is very different.
Where you can sit down and chat with guests and
Right.
other people.
Some of those hospitality suites can be very elaborate food-wise. Some of them are very basic. Here's chips and sodas.
Yeah, we
but
try to-
it varies.
I think they've lost importance, con suites, over the years. We're trying to bring that back because con suites are where you get to meet the people you didn't know you needed to meet.
Right.
And it's really the heart of the small conventions.
Parties, that's also something that the small conventions have that most of the big ones don't. I think that the Dragon Con is kind of the last of the big spenders when it comes to, they still have room parties, but a lot of the big conventions don't.
And that's the personal touch you get at the small conventions.
Right.
You don't get at the big ones.
Right.
So yeah, the small conventions are a little bit cheaper. As I say, you can get as cheap as $20 if you buy your membership early, up to usually 50, 60 at the door, compared to maybe an 80, 90 for a big convention. But you get that personal connection.
You get the personal connection, you get the experience. We're going more for the programming,
Right.
the networking, the relaxing, the connection,
It's
the
a nice...
hanging with my buddies.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Thank you guys for coming. Again, it's Dee and Hal Astell, and you'll be able to find out information about all of their events that they're in charge of and running and part of in the section below. So check that all out. And thanks for watching Costume Trek and Costume Talk, and we will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.